This is my scrap-built forging press. I'm not sure exactly how many tons it is, but I would say it's probably around 18 tons. This was entirely built out of scrap, just like my other two machines, my treadle hammer and my power hammer. If you haven't seen those videos, go check it out. This press is roughly 60 inches tall when it's completely closed, and then it's going to be more like 67-ish inches when it's fully extended. A little more than 3 feet wide and about 30 inches deep. The distance between the work rest and the top ram here without the dies, when it's fully enclosed, is roughly about 4 inches. When it's fully extended, it's closer to about 14 inches. So that means it has about 10 inches of extension on the ram. This press design I stole from Riverside Machine. I saw Walter Sorrells, he made a video, multiple videos about his forging press, and it was basically made off this design. And it really stood out to me because it was nothing like anything I'd seen before. When you see forging presses online, whether they're professionally made or people make them in their garages, there's pretty much two schools of thought. Either cylinder under or cylinder over. There's pros and cons to both, and this one has a lot of the pros from both, so it's a pretty cool combination of the two. One of the pros of having your cylinder under your work area is that, for the most part, your whole press tends to have smaller footprints, it's much more compact, and there's typically nothing over your head here, so you don't have to have a whole lot of space up top. Where if you were to put your cylinder above and have the ram going down, you have to have some kind of space up here for that cylinder to be there. Otherwise, your work area is going to be really low if the cylinder is right here. However, there are cons with that, because when you put the cylinder underneath, you have the problem that you typically run into with standard forging press designs, where if you put the cylinder underneath, they typically have it facing the other way than what I have right now, and the ram is facing up. And what will happen is your work area then becomes a carriage that slides up and down in between the frame. And then the bottom die is the one that moves while the top die is static. Well, if you put the cylinder above and the ram pushes down, then your bottom die is the one that stays put, and your top die is the one that moves. If your top die is the one that moves, it tends to be a lot more user-friendly, and there's less of a learning curve with trying to figure out how to keep it level as the bottom die moves up and down. And for the most part, people are trying to decide, do I want to just deal with the learning curve and have a more compact machine? I'm trying to figure out how to forge evenly when the die on the bottom is moving up and down and I have to keep it level with it. Or do I want to just go all the way and put the cylinder on top and then have a more user-friendly machine that comes down, and I don't have to have a learning curve, but I do have to find space in my shop for that to actually work. That's why a lot of guys who have presses that are real tall, you find them like right smack dab in the middle of their shop. And for the most part, I think they do fine with that, but it can be a lot more beneficial if you can put it in a tighter space, and it's not that big of a deal. Riverside Machine designed a forging press, again, that Walter Sorrells is using, that inspired me to build this. It's basically the same idea, and what happens is you have a top die driven ram, but the cylinder is underneath at the same time. And the way that works is it has an outside frame that goes all the way around. It's got the feet on it to stick out to the back, and that's where the motor and the hydraulic tank and everything mounts onto that. But then there's also this inside frame where the top ram goes down this 1-inch thick piece of steel, and it's got the bottom section as well, with the cylinder attached to the bottom of the work rest, and then the ram connecting with a pin to the bottom of the inside frame. Because of the way that this is designed, the forces that you're dealing with are when you press down on something. Obviously, you have downward pressure here on the top die and upward pressure there from the cylinder pushing up through the work rest, and you get pressure there, and that's how you actually forge stuff. But then you also have, because of that, pressure from the workpiece pushing out on the top frame and down on the ram through the bottom frame. That means the outside frame that goes all the way around, there is no force on this outside frame except for keeping everything in line. So you might get like a little bit of side-to-side rocking. This is pretty tight in there. There's not a whole lot of clearance in between everything. So it rocks a little bit if you forge like really unevenly. Like if I was way off here on the side of my die like that, it could rock it. But those are the only forces that I'm dealing with. I have bolts going through here so that this thing can be taken apart, but I also have a little weld bead right just here in the front connecting the work rest to the frame. So all I'd have to do to take that apart is just cut that weld bead and pull the bolts out. I got blocks down here, front and back, that keep the bottom of the inside frame in track so it doesn't kick forward or backwards. This is what we got going on the back of the press here. Up top, I have a spool valve. Got that off of Amazon. It's just your standard spool valve that you'd get for a log splitter. Right here, I got a cookie sheet that's just supported by a couple pieces of angle iron sticking out. This not only catches all the sparks and scale that comes off the forging, it keeps it off of the hoses back here and all the components, but it also catches anything that you push through and drop out the backside. It'll catch anything that lands on there, so it does a pretty good job of that. Down here we have a 212cc Predator motor from Harbor Freight, the same motor that I have on my power hammer over there, which is then connected to a hydraulic pump. This is a 13 gallon a minute hydraulic pump. Again, just the same thing that you need for a log splitter. It is a 2-stage pump. Very important that you get a 2-stage pump. The reason you want a 2-stage pump is because for a forging press, there are 2 stages that you want different PSIs at those stages. So when you're just running the machine up and down and there's no pressing going on, this pump runs at about 600 PSI. But as soon as it comes down in contact with something and actually starts pressing, it kicks into its second gear and jumps up to a potential of 3000 PSI. Realistically, you're gonna be really running around like 2700, 2800 for the most part. But you can actually make slight adjustments to that with adjustments on the spool valve. The mount that goes in between the pump and the motor is pretty common. It's just a cast iron mount that you can buy online with the pump. The Lovejoy comes along with it. When you attach this Lovejoy, pro tip, Loctite those grub screws in. Loctite those lock screws in. Make sure you Loctite those in because they will unscrew themselves while you're forging. That thing's spinning really fast. It'll flick those grub screws all over your shop, and if you got a dirt floor, they're long gone. You're probably never gonna find those, and you have to buy some more and Loctite them in. So do that in the beginning. Just slides right out, and then the die slides right out of that. So any die I want, whether it's flat dies, drawing dies, punching dies, whatever the case may be, I just have to get a piece of this 1-inch thick by 3-inch wide. Again, this is really overkill, but I really wanted it to survive, and just slide right in there. I actually don't have anything holding the bottom die yet. I mean, I have the tracks here and little stoppers on the back, top and bottom, that holds it in. But the bottom die is really not that big of a deal. You could go ahead and bolt that down, but I just haven't, and it really, again, hasn't been a big problem. Every once in a while I'll be forging. It more so happens with the drawing dies, any kind of round dies, where the bottom might slide out a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal. The top die, however, that one lets it slide out all the time if nothing's holding that in. So I think it's way more important to hold the driving die in, whether it be on the bottom or the top. If I want to change out the dies, pin comes out. Oh, excuse me. Dies slide out. I have center punch marks, 2 there and 3 there. They line up with the ones on the frame. And now I have them changed out to my drawing dies. My punching die set. Punching die set's cool because what I just did was I took that 1-inch thick by 3-inch wide material and I drilled and tapped holes so that I could bolt on and attach. Oh, there's a spider there. Go away. So I could bolt on and attach different dies, different punches, and I have currently a 1/4-inch thick by 1 1/4 long punch. I've got a 1/4 inch thick by 1 inch long punch, and a 1/4 inch thick by 1.5 inch long punch. Those all bolt on, and they slide right in, just like that. And I have my punching setup. My Coliseum, or stripping die, if you want to call it that, is the same thing. Same hole punch setup, so I can take these off and I can put a shorter stripper on there. So if I'm just doing short stuff like hammers and things, I don't need it to be that tall. It'll totally work, but why not have it a little bit shorter if you don't really need it to be that long? But then when I'm doing axes and things that are a lot taller, it's nicer to have about 4 inches of clearance here, or as opposed to like maybe a little under 3 inches of clearance. If you're gonna make a punching setup for making eyes in hammers and axes, make sure you can pull the die out. Make sure you can do that. Because the first time I did it, I just had a hole through the top here. And that's cute and everything, and it'll totally work. But if it gets stuck at any point, you have to be able to pull this punch out pretty quickly. So, make this top plate here on your stripper die pretty robust so that you can justify cutting a slot open in the front here. I've not had a single problem with any of this stuff bending. Again, I overbuilt it a little bit, but it works pretty good.